talking about what it looks like to be distinct. Obviously, that's the theme of our retreat this weekend. And we're looking at the reality that as believers in Jesus Christ, our lives are supposed to be distinct. There should be something about our lives that is different, and that can feel a little awkward for us sometimes, especially in our culture, as Christianity really is increasingly becoming more and more distant from kind of the common cultural consensus. But it can create fear, create anxiety, and create a little bit of awkwardness when it comes to us really living out our faith. But to some degree, right, Christianity, if you really think about what we believe, it is kind of weird. Right? When we think about the fact that we believe that we're saved because a guy who was God came in human flesh and he died on a cross and he rose from the dead, and the whole thing can just seem a little bit weird when you're from the outside looking in. And I think about that in a lot of different areas. A lot of times when you meet somebody new or you enter a different culture, you experience some stuff that seems weird from the outside if you don't really understand what they're doing. And so I'm getting ready to go to China next weekend. I don't know why you said, well, if you're from there or been there, or you're just excited for me, but thank you. But getting ready to go to China, and so we had a team that went to China last year from the Silver Spring campus. Some of you are here, and they were in Hong Kong. And so one of the guys told me that they get into Hong Kong, and while they're there, they're in the middle of this festival that's happening. And so there's a bunch of stuff going on in the city, but people are like putting outside of their apartments and their homes, they're like putting oranges and like all this fruit and stuff like that, which seems a little bit weird. Why are you collecting oranges outside, right? So coming into that culture, it just seems kind of awkward, right? Are you giving stuff away? Is this the way this society cares for the poor? Is this universal welfare? What is this? What are you doing here? And so they're collecting all these oranges and fruits and all this kind of stuff, and it seems really weird until you realize that this festival, basically, here's what was happening, is that they believed that the deities there were appeased by these sacrifices of fruit. That this festival was designed to please these deities so that they would have their favor for the rest of the year. So from the outside looking in, it looks pretty weird until you understand what they believe. Now, even now that I understand what they believe, it still seems a little bit weird to me. But kind of here's my point. From the outside looking into Christianity, our lifestyles are supposed to look a little bit weird. Right? Bottom line is this. We're called to live by faith, and that faith in Jesus produces a distinctive lifestyle. One way to put it would be, there should be something about our lives that can only be explained by our faith in Jesus Christ. Like, apart from understanding what we believe, it should look a little bit weird. It should look a little bit awkward. Not because we're jerks. Not because we don't do things that other people do in certain. We don't watch movies or we don't listen to music. But because there's something about the way we choose to live our lives, the way we make our decisions, the things that we participate in, the things that we pursue, the things we want to fill our time with, the way we interact with God. There should be something about our lives that only makes sense if it's explained by our faith in Jesus Christ. Now, so we're going to talk about that faith tonight, because that's what fuels a distinctive lifestyle. Now, here's what we got to talk about first. What's the difference between faith and belief? And here's why that's such an important question. James chapter 2, verse 19. We're going to be in Hebrews chapter 11. But James chapter 2, verse 19 says this. And this is so important for us to understand. It says, James says, you believe that there is one God. He's talking to Christians. And he says, good, but even the demons believe that and they tremble. In other words, even the demons have a certain kind of belief in God. But that doesn't save them. If you look at the context of James chapter 2, what James is basically saying, his point here is that sheer belief doesn't necessarily motivate this kind of distinctive lifestyle that we're going to be talking about this weekend. Just a pure intellectual belief in God, or even in Jesus for that matter, because the demons, if you look in the Gospels, they would see Jesus coming and they literally would tremble and say, you are the Son of God. They believed who Jesus was, and yet that didn't produce in them a submission to God. That didn't motivate them to obey obey God and to lay down their life to say, I'm going to follow you, God. And so what is the difference between just that kind of mere belief and actual faith? Well, faith involves belief, but it's much more than that. Faith is not just believing that what God says is true. Faith is also trusting that what God says is better. Faith is not just believing that what God says is true. Even the demons believe that what God says is true. But faith is also trusting that what God says or what God has is better. And when we have that kind of faith, we begin to let go of other things and actually start trusting God. And that's the kind of faith that actually produces a lifestyle that honors God. It's the kind of faith that actually pleases God. So I want to give you kind of outline before we even dig into Hebrews 11. This is what faith looks like. This is what fuels a distinctive lifestyle. We're going to come back to these things throughout the weekend. This is what faith looks like. What God says is true. What God has is better. So I will go with God. What God says is true. What God has is better. So I will go with God. No matter what you're facing in your life as you enter into this weekend, whether it's temptation that seems overwhelming in your life, whether it's depression or anxiety, whatever it is, when you're at a crossroads between going with the world or going with your own understanding or going with your flesh and going with God, what separates the people that go with God versus the people that go with the world or their own flesh is faith. And that faith looks like this. What God says is true. What God has is better. And we'll come to those concepts over and over again. So let's dig into Hebrews chapter 11. If you got a Bible, let's go there. We'll go the verses up on the screen in a minute, but I want to give you just an overview of chapter 11. So if you come back to these chapters, or this chapter, you'll understand what it means. We're only going to be in one section of Hebrews chapter 11. Here's the whole point of Hebrews chapter 11. The point is this: that in every generation, even in the Old Testament, God's people have always been defined by faith. So Hebrews 11, if you're new to the Bible, people call Hebrews 11 the Hall of Faith, right? See what we did there? Hall of Fame? Hall of Faith, okay? Hall of Faith, right? Right. Hebrews 11 is just this person after person after person after person being lifted up as an example of faith in God. And what the writer is doing, so this is his point, in every generation, even in the Old Testament, God's people have always been defined by faith. And what he's doing is he's walking them through a chronological timeline of Jewish history showing that faith has always been what pleases God. That their obedience to God was fueled by their faith in God. So he's walking through this history. So he's walking them through before the flood, right? You remember the story of the flood, Noah's Ark, that whole thing? So before the flood is verses 3 through 7. So he talks about what faith looked like in creation and with Abel and with Enoch and with Noah. Then he goes to the kind of what we call the patriarchal era. This is the era of kind of the founding fathers of the Jewish faith in verses 8 through 22. So he talks about Abraham and Sarah, and then Isaac and Jacob and Joseph. And then he shifts to the Mosaic era. So this is the era where Moses kind of picks up in the story, where God gives his people the Mosaic law. And so the Mosaic era is in verses 23 through 31. So he talks about Moses' parents and how what they did was motivated by faith. And Moses and Israel while they were in Egypt, and Israel at Jericho, and then Rahab. And then it picks up in verses 32 through 40 and shows how faith characterized the people of God all throughout the rest of the Old Testament. All throughout the rest of Old Covenant history. So what you're looking at in Hebrews 11 is he's taking you through these different eras in the history of the Jewish people and showing that in every era of God's people on earth, they have been defined by and characterized by faith. It has been their faith that has been what is pleasing to God. That is what has made them acceptable to God. Their trust in God, their faith in God. Not just their morality, but their faith in God that produced their morality and their distinctive lifestyle. So that's kind of an overview, but we're going to focus primarily on Abraham's example in Hebrews chapter 11. So let me read these verses and then we'll unpack them here. Verses 8 through 10, and then we'll pick up in verses 17 through 19. It says this: by faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And when he went out, not knowing where he was going, By faith he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise. And here's why. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. Then we pick up verse 17. It says, by faith Abraham, this is a weird story here, by faith Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac. Isaac is his son. We'll come back to it. And he who had received the promises was in the act of offering up his only son, of whom it was said, through Isaac shall your offspring be named. And then verse 19. He considered that God was able even to raise him from the dead, from which, figuratively speaking, he did receive him back from the dead. So let's unpack these verses. First of all, we're going to see Abraham. His life is fueled by this belief, this trust that what God says is true. A little bit of background so you can understand why this will stand out to us. In Genesis chapter 12, right? So the background of Abraham's story here in Hebrews 11 is found in Genesis chapter 12. And in that, God tells Abraham to leave everything familiar to him. His hometown, his ethnic group, his family. I want you to leave everything that's familiar to you. And I want you to head toward a place that I'm going to give you. Right? And so God, as he tells him, I want you to leave everything you know, and here's where I want you to go. And he gives Abraham two promises. He says, I'm going to give you a land. And the second promise is, I'm going to give you descendants that are going to possess the land and are going to bless the entire world. So two promises. I'm going to give you a land, it's going to be yours. And I'm going to give you descendants that are going to possess that land, and they're going to bless the whole world. Now, back to Hebrews 11, a few problems with what God has promised Abraham here. The first problem we see here in verse 8. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go to a place that he was going to receive as an inheritance, and he went out not knowing where he was going. So God doesn't immediately tell Abraham where the land is. So God says, go, and I'm going to show you. Right? So much of the Christian life is go even though you don't know. So much of what it looks like to follow God is, God, I'm going to obey you when I don't even fully understand where you're taking me. God, I'm going to obey you and I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust that your word is true even when I don't see how you're actually going to fulfill that promise. God does not tell Abraham where he's going. He just says, leave everything you know and I want you to just go. Just start moving and I'll tell you later. And I remember in my relationship with God, when I first started following God, that's how I felt. I felt like God was calling me out of a lifestyle that, quite frankly, I was having a great time. Right? So I'm at the University of Maryland. I'm living a party lifestyle. I'm doing great. I'm loving pursuing the girls and the parties and all that type of stuff. I wasn't great at it. I love pursuing girls. I wasn't great at actually finding them. The opposite word is pursue. Doesn't mean I landed there, right? But it was fun. I enjoyed it. God began to move my heart and call me away from all of that. And I did not know. Here's what I didn't know. And this is what was so difficult for me when it came to following God. I didn't know how I was actually going to stop doing the stuff that I love doing. Like for me, just the party scene, listen, I'm not against dancing, I'm not against whatever, but for me the party scene was destructive, right? And so I just did, but I loved it. Like that was my dream actually in life, was to own a club in DC. I've told this story before. I wanted to own a club in DC. I wanted to spin that off into multiple clubs and then build that into an entertainment company, right? That's what I wanted to do with my whole life. And you're like, sucks for you, you became a pastor. We'll get to that. Remember, God says better. All right. But what was so hard for me, and I remember praying. This is literally a prayer that I prayed. I remember I wrote it down, not in a journal. I don't journal. I just wrote it down in a notebook, right? Scratch the paper, whatever you want to go. I took notes, okay? So I wrote this down. I literally prayed, God, I feel like I'm jumping out the window. I hope I land on my feet. Because that's what it felt like to me when I first started following God. When I first made that decision to say, God, I'm going to let go of the world of my life as I've tried to fashion it and formulate it. I'm going to let go of that. It was terrifying because I did not know what that was going to entail for me. I certainly didn't know that it would entail me standing up here preaching to you and being a pastor, because I said I would never be a pastor in my life, right? So it was so scary. This is what Abraham is going through. God says, I want you to leave everything you know. I'm not telling you yet what your life is going to look like. I'm just telling you to go. Is my word enough for you to start moving? Abraham goes because he believes that what God says is true. Now, the second problem with what God said to Abraham, we see it here in verse 9. It says, by faith he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise. What in the world does that mean? Here's what it means. When God does show him the land, right, so this is a little bit later, Abraham travels. When Abraham and his family do actually get into the land, he gets there and the land is occupied by the Canaanites. The land is occupied by this foreign group of people who did not know God anyway, and actually would later become enemies to the Israelites. And that's why the passage here says that he was living in the promised land, but living in it as a foreigner. So he's actually living in the fulfillment of the promise, but nothing around him looks like the promise has actually been fulfilled. And so he's living there by faith. I want you to just imagine for a second, right, that you finally buy that house, right? You get the keys. You know, everybody got to do the key picture on Instagram. Look at my first house. It's so annoying, whatever. And so you get the keys to the house. You finally buy the house, and you show it to the house, right? The realtor is like, man, well, you've already seen the house by this point, but follow the illustration. The realtor's like, you're going to love it. Everything's been cleaned up for you. The walls have been painted and all that. And you open the door, and it's like slippers at the door. Somebody else's dog runs downstairs to greet you. You're like, what in the world's going on? I don't even like dogs, right? You walk upstairs, people sitting at the kitchen table, they're eating, chilling. It's kids watching TV. And you're like, but wait, this is my house. This is how Abraham feels, right? When he gets into the promised land, the land that God says would be his, and he's in it and he's living like a foreigner. Like his life, even though he's obeyed God, doesn't seem to really live up to all that God had promised. Nothing around him said that God's word is true here. But he's living in it as a foreigner, still by faith that what God says is true. And the third problem, you remember God promised him descendants. Well, one problem with that was his wife couldn't have children. That's a problem if you're going to have descendants, right? That's why Hebrews, in chapter 11, verse 11, it says, by faith Sarah herself received power to conceive, even when she was past the age. And here's why. Since she considered him faithful who had promised. In other words, even Abraham's wife Sarah, and not initially, if you look at the story, when the angel comes and tells her, you're gonna have children, and we're gonna give you all these descendants, she laughs. Right? She didn't have faith in that moment, but she put her faith and her trust in God because she considered that he is faithful who had promised it. She said to herself, what God says is true. This is how Abraham lived. This is how his family lived. This is how Sarah lived. That their lifestyle was produced out of this deep conviction that what God says is true. You see this also in chapter 11, verses 17 through 19. This is kind of one of the weirder stories in the Bible. There's several of them if you start reading your Bible. But here's one. Look at verses 17 through 19. We already read it. It says, by faith Abraham, when God tested him, and here's how God tested him. God tells him, I want you to sacrifice your son Isaac. So he's offering up Isaac as a sacrifice. It says, he who had embraced the promises was about to sacrifice his one and only son. Even though God has said to him, this is what God said, it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. So God has said to him, I'm gonna give you descendants, right? So even though your wife can't have kids, I'm gonna give you descendants. They trust God for that, and so God does actually give them offspring, right? It's crazy. They're old as I don't know what. Sarah's like, I can't even have kids. And so they have a child, Isaac, and then God tells Abraham, I want you to go up on this mountain and I want you to sacrifice Isaac. Now, what in the world is happening here? Because to be honest with you, if you've read your Bible before, if you're familiar with the story, like for a lot of people, this is one of the stories that kind of makes you be like, first of all, I don't even know if the Bible presents a picture of a good God. What kind of God would ask somebody to sacrifice their own son? First thing I'll say in response to that is, what kind of God would sacrifice his own? to purchase redemption for all of us. If you have a problem with this story, you got a problem with the gospel. Right, so we have to wrestle with that. But you got to really understand what's happening here in the story, in its context. God made Abraham a promise. A, that he and Sarah would have a son, Isaac. And B, that Abraham's descendants would multiply through Isaac. And so God is testing or confirming Abraham's faith in that promise. Right? So when God tells Abraham to kill Isaac, he's essentially asking Abraham this question: is anything too hard for me? Is there any circumstance that can hinder me, Abraham, from keeping my promise? Can death hinder me from keeping my promises? Or put it in kind of narrative form, the conversation may have gone something like this, right? God, Abraham, do you believe I'm going to keep my promise to multiply your descendants through Isaac? Abraham, yes, God. This is weird already. Yes, God. God, how confident are you in that promise? Very confident. God, do you believe death can hinder me from keeping that promise? Abraham, I hadn't thought about that. Let me think about it. Abraham, no, God, you can't lie, and nothing can stop you from doing what you say you're going to do. So if Isaac dies, I guess you just have to raise him from the dead. That's what's happening in this story. Is God has given Abraham a promise, and now God is testing him. He's bringing circumstances to his life to not to figure out if Abraham believed that God knows everything. He knows, but Abraham isn't sure he would believe it. God is confirming, establishing, really testing Abraham's faith here, and essentially asking him, do you believe that that Isaac dying can actually keep me from fulfilling my promise to give you descendants through Isaac? And Abraham, it says, reasoned not from his experience, but he reasoned from what God has said. God said, I'm going to give you descendants through Isaac. So Abraham said, wait a minute, how this work? What is true is that God's going to give me descendants through Isaac. That's what's true. How will God get there? I guess if I sacrifice, I'm just going to raise him from the dead. It's that kind of radical faith that Abraham had. So what does this have to do with us? Tom Constable puts it this way. He's a professor and writes in his commentary. He says, Abraham was willing to continue to trust and obey God because he believed God could even raise Isaac, his unique son, from the dead to fulfill his promises of an heir. Similarly, we need to continue to trust and obey God even though he may have to raise us from the dead to fulfill his promises to us. In other words, what he's saying is this: Christian faith is so radical that there are some things in God's word, there are some promises held out for us in the gospel that we literally will not see its fulfillment until after we die and until after we're risen from the grave and we're with Jesus for all of eternity and we'll experience the fulfillment of those promises there. And so if you're here and you're not a Christian, or you're a Christian and you wrestle with doubts, this is why we experience doubt. Because there are some things that in this life that just are not going to make sense. And there are some things that God has promised to us that we're just not going to see the fulfillment to. But our faith has to be in God's word to the point that God's word is so reliable that even if I die without seeing that fulfilled, I believe that on the other side, I'll experience this fulfillment. And Hebrews 11 says that over and over and over again, that even though these people saw these promises from afar off and they didn't get to see it in their lifetime, they look forward to seeing those promises in the life to come. In the life to come. But that also applies to the stuff that we will see fulfillment of in this life. The things that God says we can experience based on His Word, us believing that those things are true, and then living in light of the fact that we believe those things are true. Now, you're always going to know what you believe by how you live. Always, right? You may think you believe something or even really believe it, but you won't really know you believe it until you have the opportunity to live it out. Right? So when me and my wife first got married, first we went on a honeymoon to Mexico. That was awesome, right? And then like 2 months later, we got some friends who make a lot of money, And they were like, hey, guys, we should go to, I think we were in Jamaica or something. We should go to Jamaica. Like, we just went on a honeymoon. Like, we're in ministry, dog. Like, we don't really, we're not rolling like that. And so we work it out or whatever, and we were like, man, so all our friends going, hey, let's make it work. And so we end up going, right? And so we're in Jamaica. We're staying in this resort that's like built into these cliffs. And so it's like not cliffs where you have to go into these random places in order to jump off a cliff. It's like you're at the resort, you're sitting at the resort having dinner, and if you like, you can just get up from your table and just run and like jump off a cliff. It's kind of crazy, right? And so, of course, my friends were like, let's do that, right? Now, you've seen this on YouTube, you know what I'm saying? Like you've seen video, right, of what looks like would be so much fun, right? Something off, like, okay, so this is crazy, like, it just looks like it's gonna be so great, you believe it's gonna be so much fun, and I believe that, like, genuinely deep down in my soul. Every time I saw it, I said to myself, that is gonna be awesome, right? And then we were having dinner, and they're like, hey, let's go for a jump. And so, I still believe it until I get to the edge of the cliff, and I look down. And all of a sudden, what seemed like it would be fun just seemed ridiculous. It actually seemed like I was testing God. It seemed like, no, that's not the type of thing that you do. Why would I take life into my own hands? It's ridiculous. I want to have kids. I want to raise a family. Jesus, this is dumb, right? But when I had the opportunity to actually do it, it tested whether or not I actually believed it. And then my boy's wife was like, dude, get out of here. And ran past me and jumped off the cliff. And then I was like, I can't punk out. I just got to do it, right? So I did it, and I'm alive. But we face situations like that, right? Where we say we believe something. And we may have grown up in the church. We may say we believe in Jesus. We may say we believe that Jesus is sufficient. We may say we believe that Jesus is Lord. And then we have opportunities in our life where God brings situations and it really tests whether or not we believe that. And listen, the way you know you actually believe something is not just because you said you believed it at some point in your early life. It's because of actually how you actually live. You know what you believe by how you are living it out. And so if your life is not distinctive in the sense that your life reflects the truths of Scripture, then what you need to really be wrestling with before the Lord is, do I really believe this? Like, do I really believe this? Like, when it comes to just the truth of the exclusivity of Jesus Christ, that Jesus says He is the only way, He's the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through Him. Apart from Jesus Christ, apart from belief in Jesus, John 3, the wrath of God remains on you. If we really, really believe that, then why would we share our faith? Maybe it's because there's something in our hearts that struggles to really believe that. You know what you believe by how you actually live. And some of us struggle, right, to really live out our faith because we struggle to believe that the Word is true. So I'm not spending a bunch of time talking about how the Word is true, but it's the most reliable historical document of all time. 23,000 archaeological digs to confirm its accuracy, 6,000 New Testament manuscripts in comparison to 10 for Julius Caesar. If you're going to believe anything about history is true, you have to believe the Bible. Right? So you can just read and read and read. If you have questions about that, come ask me afterwards. I can give you resources. But the Bible is true. But even apart from the external evidence, Charles Spurgeon says it this way. He's a famous preacher. He says, the Word of God is like a lion. You don't have to defend a lion. All you have to do is let the lion loose and the lion will defend itself. In another one of his sermons, he says, listen, the best way to defend a lion is just to let it out of its cage. If you really want to see if the Word is true, listen. Study archaeology, study the philosophy of it, study the reliability of the manuscripts, do all of that. But start reading your Bible. Start reading your Bible. This is the supernatural Word of God. Listen, if God is real, and if God is actually involved in history, and if God actually speaks, and if God actually inspired these words by His Holy Spirit, He can certainly persuade you in your soul that this Word is true. You start reading this Word. You'll start seeing some amazing stuff, like how in the world is Isaiah 53 so specifically prophesy in detail what the Messiah will be like, where the Messiah will be born, what the Messiah will go through. We're talking thousands of years before it would actually happen. You're like, oh, they just went back and wrote that into the story. No, they didn't, because we have the manuscripts and we have them dated, and we know when they were dated. You start to see those types of things inside of God's Word, and that starts to really testify to your heart. Man, I think this is true. But beyond that, when you start reading this Word and you stop reading it and it starts reading you, and it starts showing you your own soul and your own heart, and it starts making sense out of reality and the stuff that you experience, your confidence in God's Word starts to grow. Some of us struggle to believe God's Word intellectually, but most of us, we struggle to just believe God's Word emotionally. Like me standing at the edge of the cliff. I just get overwhelmed in the moment by fear, by anxiety, or whatever. And I start doubting that God's Word is true. But I love what Scripture says. Joshua 21, 43 and 45. It says, thus the Lord gave to Israel all the land that he swore to give their fathers. And they took possession of it, and they settled there. Not one word of all the good promises that the Lord had made to the house of Israel had failed. All came to pass. Not one word that God promised them, and not one word that God promises us through His Word will fail. Ever. Proverbs 30, verse 5. Every word of God proves true. He is a shield to those who take refuge in Him. Every word of God proves true. And then can I share with you one of the craziest passages in Scripture to me? It's one of the craziest passages. You didn't say, yeah, I have to do it. It's here. I don't even know if this is up on the slide. This is, to me, literally one of the craziest passages in Scripture. This is 2 Peter chapter 1. Let me read verses 16 and 18. It says, this is Peter writing. He says, for we did not follow cleverly devised tales when we made known to you the power and coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. But we were eyewitnesses of His majesty. He says, listen, when we're telling you about Jesus' life, this stuff that's recorded in the Gospels, these stories that have been circulating throughout the Christian community and the early church, we didn't make this stuff up. We were eyewitnesses of the majesty of Jesus. Verse 17, for when He received honor and glory from God the Father, such an utterance as this was made to Him by the majestic glory. This was the utterance. This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. And we ourselves heard this utterance made from heaven when we were with Him on the holy mountain. What is Peter talking about? He's talking about when He got to be on the mountain with Jesus, and this is called the Transfiguration of Jesus. When Jesus was walking on earth, Peter is with Jesus on this mountain, and we don't fully understand exactly what happened, but Jesus' physical presence changed. And it was weird because you can just see that He actually was divine. Like his whole situation changed up. And then you had God speaking to Jesus out of heaven. And Peter is saying, listen, I was there. I saw Jesus, and I literally heard the words come out of the sky confirming that this is Jesus. This is who Jesus was. That's not the craziest part. This is the craziest part. Right here, verse 19, he says, so we have the prophetic word made more sure. Made more sure than what? The word that we have in Scripture, the word that was given by the prophets throughout the Old Testament and written down for us, he says, that word is more sure than the personal eyewitness experience we had in Jesus. Like God's word is more reliable than our personal experience. It's easy for us to say that because we know it's kind of a cop-out because we don't have personal experience with the resurrected Jesus. But for Peter to say that, who saw the resurrected Jesus, who saw Jesus transfigured, and he says, but this word of God that we have, because it records generation after generation after generation of God's faithfulness to His promises, and God actually demonstrating the truthfulness of His word, this word is even more sure and more reliable than our eyewitness experience. So we have to believe that God's word is true. Our lives are fueled by faith that what God says is true, but secondly, that what God has is better. What God has is better. It's better than what the world offers. It's better than what our flesh promises. Notice that Abraham didn't just follow God because he believes God's word was true. He followed God because he trusted that God's word was better. We won't spend a lot of time on this now because we're going to focus on this a lot tomorrow night. Let me just give you this one verse. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 10. It says, listen, Abraham left everything.
Not only because he believed what God said was true, that he was actually going to give him this land and his descendants, but look at verse 10. It says, for he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. Abraham was looking forward to living in this new city that God was going to give him, pointing to the new city that we would heaven, that we would experience for all eternity in the presence of God. Abraham believed deep down in his core that what God had in store for him, that what God had available for him was better than what he could attain for himself. Through the deceitfulness of this world, through the empty and false promises of his flesh. You see other examples of this throughout Hebrews 11. Hebrews 11, chapter 6. And without faith it's impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. Listen, to have faith is not just that God exists, but that God is a rewarder. That God gives something better. Verses 24 through 26 talking about Moses. In chapter 11 it says, by faith Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God, rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt. Why? Because he was looking ahead to his reward. Like Moses, even though he could have chilled out in Pharaoh's palace as an Egyptian because he'd been adopted by Egyptians, right? He says, I'm going to leave them. I'm going to go back to my own Hebrew people and be with them. I'll leave all of these pleasures. Why? Because I'm not leaving ultimate pleasures. I'm pursuing better pleasures. Because of the reward that is held out for me. Hebrews chapter 10, verses 34 and 35, describing Christians who are being persecuted for their faith. It says, for you had compassion on those in prison. And listen, you joyfully accepted the plundering of your property, since you knew that you yourselves had a better possession and an abiding one. Listen, you didn't punk out on your faith. You didn't give up on your faith in Jesus when persecution came. When people were coming in and stealing your property, you did not say, you know what, I'll deny Jesus in order to keep my property, because you knew you had a better possession in Jesus. In other words, all throughout the scriptures, people live in obedience to God, not only because they believe what God says is true, but because they believe what God says is better. And you pursue what is better by obeying what is true. This is what David says in Psalm 119:35. It says, direct me in the path of your commands, for there I find delight. Where do I find delight? In the path of your commands. It's in my obedience to you, and in the communion with you that I experience in that obedience. That's where I find delight. And what you have for me, God, is better than what I'll find if I keep running away from you, if I keep trying to live my life my own way. What God says is true, what God has is better, so I will go with God. Listen, this is the framework of faith for everything we're going to go through in our life and every decision that we're going to make as it relates to following God. When it comes to dealing with just wanting people's approval at the expense of our own integrity, we believe that what God says is true. That God in Colossians chapter 3 says, for you have died and your life is now hidden with God in Christ. Listen, you've died and your life is hidden with God. In other words, like your life, the fullness of your life hasn't even been fully revealed yet, because it's being kept for you by God in Christ. And so you're going to experience that fullness after this life when you're with Jesus. And so you believe that that's true. And you believe that what's on the other side of your obedience is better than you just trying to chase people's approval and just giving them whatever they want, even if that causes you to disobey God. When it comes to lust, man, instead of pursuing that, instead of constantly trying to find pleasure and joy out of pornography, you choose to believe that what God says is true. He says, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. You believe that that's true, and you believe that that's better. That it's better to see God. That Jesus, I want to see you. I want to see your fullness. I want to experience, I've just been saying, I want to experience all of your glory and all of your fullness. I want to experience the fullness of joy that is in your presence. That's better, God, than this momentary satisfaction, this superficial satisfaction I'm going to have through satisfying my sexual urges. It is true in every area of our life. It's true when we're dealing with worry. And we say, God, I believe that what you said is true. That your Heavenly Father knows what you need even before you ask it. And so when you ask it, you're asking in confidence that God not only knows, but like we say, God, He wants to reward those who eagerly seek Him. You say, God, what you have for me is better. What you've already given me is better than just sitting here and worrying and trying to take my life into my own hands. The way we follow God is by faith that what He says is true and what He has is better. And this is the goal. This is the goal. And we'll see this tomorrow. This is the goal of this distinct life that God calls us to live. Is so that when people observe our life, they'll say, what God says is true. What God has is better. I want Him. I want Him. There should be something about the way we live our life that causes people to pause and say, wait a minute, maybe what God says is actually true. And maybe what God has is actually better than what I have and what I'm trying to pursue. So you know what? I want God. I want God. And you get to be the person to be there and just say, you can have God. Let me show you God. It's through Jesus. You follow me as I follow Christ. And you'll find the same joy, delight, and satisfaction that I've found in Him. So, question as we wrap up. What do people see when they observe your lifestyle? What do they see? They see a difference. What observable evidence is there in your life that your faith is in God? That you genuinely believe what He said is true, what He has is better. Just like I said, I had to make that decision in my own life, and it was terrifying. And there was times in my life where I was tempted to believe, you know what, I think I may have made a mistake in following Jesus. I think I gave up too much. I think I cut a little bit too deep when it comes to obeying God and abstaining from the stuff, man, that's pulling me away from Him. And every single time, God has shown me over and over and over and over again, listen, what I say is true and what I have is better, over and over again. And you may be struggling to believe that, but listen, there are dozens and dozens of people around you who will look you in your eyes and just say, listen, I found that to be real. I found that to be real. You want to know why I obey God? You want to know why I'm willing to look weird to the rest of the world? You want to know why I'm willing to stand and sing to God and that looks a little bit weird? You want to know why I bow my head and I close my eyes to pray and I look ridiculous if God isn't actually there? You want to know why I fight against sexual immorality? You want to know why I give money to a church, right? You want to know why I do those things? It's not just because I'm trying to just follow the rules. It's because I genuinely believe in my heart that what God says is true and that what God has for me in my obedience is better than anything the world has to offer or anything that my flesh promises. And so here's what we're going to see throughout the rest of the weekend as we talk about living a distinct life. We're going to see these things played out in all different areas. Tomorrow we're going to look at moral purity. Then we're going to look at joy. Like what does it look like for us to have a distinct joy that doesn't point people to us and our awesome circumstances, but points people to the God that we worship who is amazing and completely reliable. And then we're going to look at love. How does our love show up in our life, and how is that love distinct from the definition that the world has of love? And how does that point to the love of God in Jesus Christ? So I just want to give you a minute, and the band will come out, and we're going to sing. But I'm going to give you just a minute to just think about that question. Like, what do people see when they look at your life? What do they see when they look at your life? Where are you struggling to believe that what God said is true, or where are you struggling to believe that what God has is better? I just want you to just individually, privately in your own heart, just to pray in light of that to the Lord. And I'll pray for us to close, and then we'll sing. Take a minute with the Lord. Father, I pray, Lord, that these truths, God, would take root in our hearts. Father, when we think about living a life that's distinct, Father, which just means living a life in obedience to you that makes us distinct from people that don't live a life in obedience to you, God. I know for me, so often, Lord God, I can get just caught up in just trying to be a good Christian. Just trying to do more, God. Just trying to muster up enough willpower, Lord God, to be able to do the things that you tell me to do, Father. But you're a much better God than that. Father, you're not just calling us to obey you just out of sheer willpower, Lord God. You drill deeper than that. You drill into our hearts, down to the very core of what we believe about you, what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about this world. So, Father, you've given us your word. You've given us these great and precious promises, Father. And we want to believe that those things are true, Lord God. And like, Lord, you have told us over and over and over again that you've come to give us abundant life. Lord, that you work for our joy. We desperately in our hearts want to believe that what you have for us is better. So, Father, Lord, we're trying to do this just in our own strength. And we're trying to follow you out of sheer willpower, Lord. Would you just drill deeper down into our hearts, Lord? And would you pour these truths down into our soul? And would you strengthen our faith? Renew, Lord, our commitment to you this weekend, Lord God. We love you and we pray in Jesus' name.